Hello, and welcome to episode 10 of That 60s Recording Podcast. My name is Joe Montague, and I am your host. Today, I've got a really exciting episode. I just can't believe that I managed to speak to this chap. His name's David Hood, and he is bass player from the legendary Muscle Shoals rhythm section, who were the house band at Fame Studios and then later went on to own their own studio. I'm just recorded on an unbelievable amount of hits. He is a part of recording royalty, music royalty. He's just an absolute legend. So there's a lot of stuff has been covered in the past. There's the Muscle Shoals documentary that was on Netflix, and obviously David is probably talked about this, countless times. So be a little bit, I suppose, be mindful that, I was trying to be mindful that he will have talked about this a lot. And I tried to keep the conversation fairly natural and explore particular areas that I was interested in, I suppose, rather than trying to persistently get David to sort of rake over ground that he's done before. You know, if you're interested in the sort of deep story of the Muscle Shoals thing, and you can go and watch the documentary. And we do cover some of that stuff, but I guess that does sort of come across in the conversation, and I'm almost excusing it because I was mindful of that, and I do move on fairly quickly if I get the sense that it's not something that we should be dwelling on, I guess is the right way to put it. But either way, he's just a super sweet chap. It was an honour to speak to him, and I really, really hope that you find this conversation interesting. So here he is, David Hood. So I'm really pleased to have here on FaceTime with me David Hood, who is a member of the famous Muscle Shoals rhythm section. So thank you very much for coming on to chat with me today, David.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
So I thought we'd start with sort of the link between us. Is a drummer from the UK here called Ralph Salmins, who I'm sure a lot of the people based in the UK here will have heard of. And Ralph plays drums for the Waterboys, and you toured with the Waterboys for a couple of years. Is that right?
Yes.
So how
we that's when I met Ralph. I didn't know it was the Waterboys. I've worked with a lady who I met through Dan Penn, who's a great songwriter here. And she contacted me and asked if I would come and record in Nashville with this songwriter. And it turned out to be Mike Scott. And it was loading my stuff in that day at the studio. Ralph came and helped me carry my stuff in. And I was late because it's very rare, but we had some snow and ice. And so it made me late getting to the recording session. And Ralph knew who I was or knew of my work. And so he was real happy that I was working with him and the Waterboys, as it turned out. I thought it was just going to be a solo album with Mike. But it turned out to be the Waterboys. I met Steve Wickham at the hotel that next day and really enjoyed working with them. Mike Scott is a very, very talented singer, songwriter, guitar player, and really he's underrated, I think. His guitar playing is really fantastic for rock and roll. Of course, Ralph and I hit it off immediately.
I can imagine that both your playing styles complement each other massively.
And the only reason I stopped working with the Waterboys, though they might have been ready for me to leave, but I fell. I was in the hotel in Norway and fell in the hotel room and broke my left wrist. And so I couldn't play for 3 months. Couldn't play at all for 3 months, and it hurts right now.
I didn't know that because I've been to see Ralph always gets me into the shows when he comes and tours in the north where I'm from, which I'm very grateful for. So I've seen you play with them a couple of times, and
Really?
yeah, and then I did wonder. I just assumed you were busy and that you didn't have the time for it.
No, I was enjoying it. I've been a studio player most of my career. Didn't Never have done a lot of live playing once I started working in the studio, and it looked to me when after we did cut the album with the Waterboys, the Modern Blues album. Uh, they asked if I would be interested in touring with them, and I thought it meant like once or twice, one or two shows, and that was it. But it turned into about 2.5 years, and I really enjoyed it. It was a great break, and I think I was 72 years old at the time, so I was an older guy than the rest of the group. But I thought, well, if I'm ever going to do any touring, like actual touring, better do it now. I'm now 76. I'll be 77 next month, or 2 months, and I think it would be really hard now for me to tour and be gone like that. And it's not even there now.
Well, Ralph mentioned when I was chatting to him about the Waterboys tours that you get looked after quite well. So I imagine it was quite a nice tour to be part of.
Yeah, it was. And not only toured, I toured with Traffic in 1972 and 73. And you talk about being well taken care of. That was really well taken care of on that. Then I did a blues tour in '93. Like I do it every 20 years. Uh, and so I did a blues tour of Europe in '93, and I thought, Mo, I don't want to do this anymore. And so it was another 20 years before I did it again.
Um,
But
so are you still mostly working in studios now, or are you doing some live work?
yes, unfortunately, there's not very much work now because of the pandemic.
Well, yes, yeah.
I did a session last week, and I did a session about 2 weeks before that. And we were going to, me and the keyboard player I worked with quite a bit, made an agreement that we were going to wear a mask, and be very, very careful when we go in there. And it's about five 17, 18-year-old guys in a band, young guys, and they were just all over us. Uh, it just did one track, but I thought, if I'm worth it to do this, to risk getting COVID-19. So I don't know how much I'll do. I really need to pick my sessions better than that one.
Yeah, it is certainly a difficult time at the moment. I'm lucky I've got my place, and then I'm obviously not playing live at the moment because all theatres are closed and everything. So it's very
Well,
hard.
there's just no live music here now.
Wow.
I think there's some in Tennessee, which we're about where we live here in Muscle Shoals. We're about 20 miles away from Tennessee, and there's clubs up there that have been live playing. But I don't want to be around a crowd of people.
No, no, not at all.
I'm in the danger zone as far as age goes.
Yeah. So I appreciate that you've this is the stuff that you will have covered, but I wondered if we could go right back to sort of the beginning and track
Sure.
your career. So can you talk to me about how you got started with the bass in general?
Well, I had a friend who had a guitar, and I was trying to learn how to play the guitar, and wanted to start a band. So I thought, well, I'll buy a bass. Happened that his father worked a regular job during the day, but in the evenings he repaired radios and TVs. So we printed up some stationery that said Hamby's radio TV service and sent it to Fender. And he ordered a new Fender Jazzmaster, and I ordered a 1961 Fender Jazz bass.
Lovely.
Yeah, my friend got the Jazzmaster, and I got the bass. And we decided, since he was a better player, I would play the bass. And so that's how I started. And we started a little band playing frat parties and small school dances and things for about 4 years. Um, anyway, same recording studio in our town. And our band recorded a single at Fame, and I got to know Rick Hall, the producer, owner of the studio. And so when he would have little low budget jobs, he would hire me to come play bass. It just started like that. Um, my first union scale recording session with Percy Sledge. It was the follow up to When a Man Loves a Woman. It was Warm and Tender Love by Percy Sledge. That was my first real union scale recording session.
Wow.
And it happened to be a gold record. So when you have a gold record, people start calling. So I had to learn very quickly how to play the bass. And I've been playing 4 years at that time, 4 or 5 years, but I really had to get serious about playing original stuff and not things I was just copying. And so that I had to learn very quickly, and I'm still learning.
I think that I mean, as a side note, I think that's an attitude that all of the best players that I know all have that exact attitude. So I'm certainly not surprised to hear it from you.
Yeah, it got me working at Fame Recording Studio and the studio that Percy recorded at with what became the Muscle Shoals rhythm section. Drums, first Spooner Oldham, but then Barry Beckett on keys, Jimmy Johnson on rhythm and guitar, and an assortment of a lot of different guitar players. Eddie Hinton was our first guitar player when we started our own studio, but we worked with Pete Carr, who passed away just in the last year. He was the guitar player on Main Street with Bob Seger. Worked with a lot of different guitar players.
So what I'm really interested in sort of the fact that you got recording with Rick Hall very early on. What do you think that he saw in you as a sort of a young bass player that had only really been playing 4 years and sort of maybe by your own admission wasn't the most schooled bass player yet? What did he see in your playing?
Maybe he saw me as fertile ground for somebody who would learn. He could train me. I don't know. I learned a lot with Rick, and thought of it. Rick was not the easiest person to work for. He is, especially at the beginning, because it was mono at first. If you made a mistake, you had to go back and do the whole thing again, the whole band. And so he was brutal in calling you out for mistakes. So I learned quickly not to make any or very many mistakes. Tell Mama by Etta James is one of the first early recordings I did with him. That was 1967, I think. And there's a mistake in it. Not really my mistake. It was just a mistake. We go too long on the first verse before we go to the chorus. So that means you have to do it again the next time. And every time I play it since then, you all have to play that mistake.
It's I literally just listened to that song before we got on the phone with each other, so it's funny you bring that up.
Yeah.
So what were you, kind of 18 around that time, late teens?
Well, no, I was 22, 23.
Okay.
I'm like I said, 76 now.
So were you working with the Mystics at that time as well?
No, when the Mystics' last show, night before my recording session with Percy Sledge.
Okay.
That was May 15th, 1906. And that's when my first real turn-up recording session was. And that was the last show that I played with the Mystics. That was all the other guys graduated college and go on to real jobs.
So it kind of dovetailed quite nicely into
right,
sort of,
it did.
Yeah. So then from that first session, was it fairly regular sessions after that, or did it take a little while to build up?
It's amazing. I've got all my books, my daily diaries. I have them all. 1962 or 63. The first ones are just calendars I have hanging on the wall that I write dates on. But I've kept all my diaries,
Wow.
work diaries, and I was working every week, sometimes several times a week. It wasn't a lot of money at first. Later, got to be a pretty good living. Because as I said, I was married and had a son, and then later a daughter. Uh, so I had to make a living. I had to make money.
Was that the fact that you were married with children part of your decision to sort of stay with the studio work without going off
Yes,
on the road?
yes, yes.
How would a typical session? So we're talking the early part. This is at Fame Studios, isn't it? So we're not quite yet.
Well, yeah, Fame Studio and Quinn Ivy Studio were first days recorded, and they're here in Muscle Shoals. One of them, Fame's still here, and in 1969, Rick wanted to sign the rhythm section to an exclusive contract where we worked his sessions and nobody else's. And by that time, I was working with all kinds of different people, and I didn't want to work with just one uh, for him. And so that's when we made the decision that we were going to buy a studio. And it so happened that there was a studio in town available for us to buy and renovate, and that became Muscle Shoals Sound.
So, and you came to that decision collectively, all sort of all together.
Yeah, yeah. We knew we were a rhythm section, enjoyed working with each other, and had a following of clients and things. And so we thought, well, look. And at that time, we were working with Jerry Wexler at Atlantic Records, through Wilson Pickett and Aretha Franklin and different Atlantic artists. And Wexler told us that if we bought the studio, he would start bringing all his work to us. So that really kicked things off.
And
it's what's wild is the first artist that he brought to us was Cher.
oh,
And yeah, without Sonny. Sonny came, but it was her first effort as a solo artist. And there's the album cover is a picture of everybody standing out front of our studio with Sonny and Cher and Wexler and all these people.
yeah.
And since that photo was taken, there must have been hundreds of photos taken in front of that studio of the different people we worked with. But that was the very first.
Oh, cool.
We cut about 2 weeks after that, or 3 or 4 weeks after that, we recorded with Boz Scaggs, which has the famous "Loan Me a Dime" with Dwayne Allman playing that everybody listens to.
Did when you broke away, did it feel like a big like a huge change, or what did it feel like a natural progression?
It was really scary because, to my knowledge, there's not ever been a rhythm section that owned the studio, and so we were not only expected to make great records, we were expected to pay the bills and be able to pay our mortgage payments and do the whole bit. And it was scary at first. We didn't know whether or not we would have any work, but luckily we did, thanks to Jerry Wexler and then later on Al Bell at Stax and some other.
Was it your relationship with Jerry that sort of gave you guys the confidence to break away like that? If you hadn't had that relationship with Atlantic, then maybe it wouldn't have happened.
Well, it helped. Yeah, we went to New York when we got the chance to buy this studio. It was a little 4-track studio in town that a fella had built for his son. Turned out that they weren't doing any good with it, and so we bought it. But we went to New York and talked to Wexler, and Wexler said he would help. It'd bring us some work, and also it'd lend us some money, which we had to pay back with studio time. Some of our work. So we worked really cheaply for the first. It wasn't a great deal for us, but it got us started.
Yeah. Then I'm interested in how you balanced sort of the business side of it with the playing side of it. Did you sort of
Well,
assign roles or?
we did. I was the one who booked the studio. Barry, keyboard player, he make chord charts at the beginning of every session. That was the thing that really attributed to our success. Is we when we were learning, it'd be new songs every day, and so Barry would write out the chord charts, and then we had a copy machine with copies, so everybody was going from the same chart, and that we got really quick and good because people, the more time you spend, the more it costs for the people who are coming to the studio. So we could knock out a track an hour easily, and so that was part of it. And Jimmy Jimmy Johnson had experience running a publishing company, and so he was sort of the head of the studio and helped us get our publishing started. So we all had different roles.
How did a typical session work? So did an artist come down earlier and or did an artist have a producer that knew the track first and then the chord charts were written?
A producer would usually, or sometimes with and sometimes without the artist, but anyway, they would have the songs picked, a lot of them. But that was, and they would bring them, and that would be the first time we'd hear them was the day of the session. And thing that built our publishing company is we would know every week or whenever these people would come record, they never had enough songs. So we had songwriters that we had hired for our publishing company. We'd say, well, write a song for such and such artist. And they'd write songs for these people. And so every session we'd get a song or two recorded by these artists. And so that helped us get our publishing company started. And that's where the money is in recording, is in publishing.
That's really interesting. I love the idea that you guys sort of rose above just sort of being players and really had the nous of the business sense to do this stuff.
Yeah, and we co-produced at first without any compensation. We co-produced everything with all the people we worked with. Later on, we started saying, look, we want a production royalty for doing these things. And so we did that with Bob Seger and a few other artists. And I still get royalties with Bob Seger 30 years later, 40 years later. That's wonderful. And usually it was just a handshake deal.
I know. I mean, I know it in musicians in sort of my peer group and lots of people I've worked with. A lot of players don't have the foresight, that foresight, to play the long term game. They're just they want a quick buck now, rather than doing playing the long game.
And we always, when we had our rhythm section going in our studios, we always filed union contracts, which a lot of guys don't want to mess with. It's extra trouble, but we were working with, like I said, Atlantic Records and Stax Records and Columbia and all these record labels, and they were used to working with union musicians anyway. And so we always insisted that we had a contract, and that really paid off. And it was our I want to call it our team. The four of us together stuck to these rules and looked out for each other, and that was one of our strengths.
Could you just explain how the union side of things works for the listeners that are in the UK? Because I'm not clear on how it works in the US.
Well, it's really strange now. There's I haven't worked a union session, probably maybe one or two this year. Most people want to come in, pay cash, get in, get out, and not do it. But at one time, the record labels all required that there be union sessions, and that's no longer the case. But at one time, the major labels like Atlantic or Columbia or Stax, they wanted them to be union sessions, and so we did.
What was the...
And what it is, it's a 3-hour recording session, but I don't know what the exact, it might be $500 or something for the 3 hour session, and there was really weren't expected to do any one number of songs, but usually we would get 3 or 4 songs in that 3 hour session, and it's a set fee, and there's also part of that money. There's part of the money that goes to a pension fund. So now, at 76 years old, I'm collecting a pension that I paid into starting when I was 24 years old, and
Wow.
that's a wonderful thing. I mean, to be my age, that's the only retirement I have. That and what they call Social Security. Uh,
That's
that's
that is unbelievable. I
Yeah, it is unbelievable, and not very musicians uh, are privileged to do that. But we, by sticking together and saying we're not going to work unless we do a session, file a contract, and it took the four of us to have the strength to do that.
so it works for both ways because it means that you guys get the pension and the contract, and the label gets sort of a group of efficient
Yeah,
players
yeah.
who could probably turn out more tracks than the
At
3 hours is worth.
yeah, and in the prime time of our rhythm section, we were a producer's dream because they would come in with an artist. It didn't matter what artist, with songs we'd never heard, and they would leave with an album or whatever they were trying to do. They would leave, and it would be really good. They weren't all hits, but they were all well done.
Were you guys were you hanging out together? Were you mates outside of the business, or how did your relationships
Not
work?
not a whole lot because we were really working. We were working so much, we really didn't hang out with each other that much. We did some, but not a lot.
Were you
And we
working
were,
most days?
yeah, yeah. Like would start on Monday and do an album. People would leave Friday with an album.
That's a. I mean, I love me personally. I love that the kind of the early. The thing that springs to my mind is early Beatles records where they would go in and just cut an album in a day. And
Yeah,
I think music, especially when you're playing with players of your caliber, the music is benefits massively from doing things fast and making quick decisions.
yeah, yeah. And we got to be really versatile in the different kinds of things we would do. I mean, I'm not really a jazzer. I'm not really a country player or anything, but I had to learn different things. We got to be we we wouldn't tell somebody we couldn't do something. We would say we could do it, and then we'd try to do it, and it would work. It worked most of the
So,
time.
would you be going back and listening to reference records to try and get some ideas on what to play?
sometimes, sometimes, and when we worked with Paul Simon, he had booked 3 or 4 days at our studio. He booked the studio for one song. The song was "Take Me to the Mardi Gras," which is on There Goes Rhyming Simon album. And so the day before he came, we got in somebody's car, I can't remember now, and rode around and listened to earlier Paul Simon stuff and Simon and Garfunkel stuff, and kind of to put that in our heads. And he came in, and we could take me to the Mardi Gras. We got it on the second take, and he had 4 days booked. And so that's when he said, "Well, let's do Kodachrome. Let's do all these other songs that went into that album." Uh, he was not really he was never used to working. I'm sorry if somebody's trying to.
That's all right.
There we go. I got rid of it. Uh, he usually would book the studio time for one song, and we cut half an album with him uh, on those days, and he was thrilled to death. And it was our studio was a funky little place. The day that he first came, it was raining, and so it was water was leaking in the studio. We had buckets everywhere to catch the water.
Amazing. What
Yeah,
were you? I mean, presumably everything was cost conscious, but you were like must have been very confident in what you could produce for these people to have them come to a place that was leaking water.
Yeah, I think I don't know. We were confident, but we're not cocky. I don't think. Roger is a brilliant drummer. Was a brilliant drummer. He no longer plays now, but he was really the backbone of the group. If you don't have a good drummer, what are you going to do? You can't. You can fix a lot of things, but you can't fix a bad drummer. And Barry was such a talented and keyboard player. Uh, it was a combination. It was hard to lose.
It's are you guys all still in touch now? You speak really fondly
Well,
of them all.
Barry passed away probably 10 years ago, and Jimmy died this past year.
Oh, okay.
And then Roger has got some health problems, and so he no longer plays. But we talk regularly, and I work with a lot of other people these days. I'm like 10 to 20 years older than most of them now, but it's like I said the other day. I worked with teenagers, which is not uncommon, I guess. But I enjoy working. Whenever there's the work, I think the thing that I've always enjoyed the most was the learning a new song and seeing what I could do with it, and then the next song, and then the next song, then the next song. I would hate to be in a band where I only played the same songs all the time, and that would have probably ended my situation with the Waterboys because we were doing the Waterboys music. But that was it. Every now and then, Mike would throw in some weird thing, and that was I enjoyed that, but I don't think I'd like to be in a group where I only played one group's songs. I like to play the different stuff.
Do you find that you're when you're going into work on tracks now, how do they compare in terms of challenging your you're talking about like wanting to play different stuff. So if you go in,
Yeah,
when you
that's
were when you were younger, you might have been challenged because you hadn't had the experience, but now you're obviously much more experienced. Are you still challenged in the same way?
yeah. Well, now age is creeping up on me. I've got arthritis in my hand. I haven't broken my left wrist. Added to that, but I've had 3 shoulder surgeries. Feed your shoulders, when you play bass or anything. Uh, so I've had some physical problems that make it. I can't do all the stuff I could do when I was 50.
But do you?
But I still enjoy the challenge of new stuff.
Yeah, you coming up with parts and that kind of thing.
Another thing that's changed is the business itself. At one time, there were all these people record albums, and the record labels put up the money for them to record and things like that. That's very rare now. So the record business is all turned around. The artists don't get paid. They have to go out and tour and get their money from live shows, and that's what's killing everybody now because they can't do any live shows.
Well, yes, yeah, exactly. Were you guys as the Muscle Shoals rhythm section? Were you asked to go out on tour with artists?
Occasionally, we went out. We did we did the thing with Traffic. Was at first was just Roger and I,
Okay.
and then the next Jimmy went and did the front of house sound, and because he was a skilled engineer, sound engineer as well as guitar player. And then the second year, Barry went and played with us too. That was 1973. We did a few shows with Art Garfunkel with the Buffalo Philharmonic Orchestra,
Wow.
where we played in Buffalo, and the orchestra was playing, and then we rose up out of the floor in front of the orchestra and played. And that was with Michael Tilson Thomas, who's now the director of the San Francisco Symphony Orchestra, I think. Uh, I've gotten to do a lot of exciting things, but most of it has been in the studio, uh,
Would
and
you?
that suits me.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Would you say that you're happiest in the studio? You prefer
I
that
would
to the?
say that, yes.
Yeah.
I was always like, with the Waterboys, and by that time I'd been playing for 50 years. Uh, Still always a little nervous for the show because I think I was always used to having my chord charts in front of me and stuff like that. After a while with the Waterboys, he said, "Well, we don't want to have charts on the stage anymore." Mike Scott was a little bit of a dictator Of course, he's the head of the band. But after a while, he's the only one I don't really miss in the Water Boys. I miss Ralph and I miss Steve, and I miss them. But Mike would be a little bit difficult at times.
I'd
And
heard.
that,
Sorry, I was going to say I heard from Ralph is extremely diplomatic, and I had heard from Ralph that that Mike can be challenging at times.
yeah, I mean, he would really be all over Ralph sometimes, and I think, well, what? Couldn't really understand what he was hearing that Ralph wasn't giving him sometimes. Some of the, I think on the Modern Blues album, there's 2 tracks Mike used a Nashville drummer on, and I thought, well, what Ralph was playing was great. So has his own idea.
Yeah, yeah. It's very interesting. It's really tricky. I mean, I loved Ralph's playing, and it surprises me to hear that somebody could, that somebody could not have Ralph nail something.
Yeah. And Ralph is a very disciplined and skilled player, and knowledgeable. He's educated.
Absolutely, yeah. How do you find recording now, the sessions that you're doing now, in comparison to what you were doing pre? So I'm thinking mainly in like the tape era versus now. I mean, presumably now you're playing to clicks and doing stuff isolated.
Tell you what, I don't really like a whole lot. Working, playing to tape, as you say, we had to learn the whole song and get it as a performance, and there was no going back fixing Pro Tools. Pro Tools is great tool for a producer, but it's not. It doesn't help a musician. They will say, "Oh, we'll fix that." I hate that. I want to get it right, and so there's very few sessions now where we really get things as good as I'd like to get them.
It's interesting to hear you say that. There's a few guys I've spoken to. I mean, namely Ken Scott, who produced some Beatles stuff and the Bowie things, said exactly the same thing. It's sort of made musicians. I think Ken lived in Nashville for a few years, and he's saying the quality of player has gone down because they think, well, just fix it in the mix.
Yes. Yeah, I hate that. I hate it when they say that. I worked with one guy who is really, really a producer and a songwriter. He's really, really talented with Pro Tools. So you'll go in to start working on the song, and he'll make a track out of just what you've done running down the song. And I hate that. I want to learn the song and get it all the way through like a performance. And that's not happening as much.
No. It's something, I mean, me personally, it's something I strive for in guys I work with. Is I love to have a full take without any edits. And what do you think do you think it's something missing in musicians training now, or do you think it is literally just down to the attitude in the studio and what they're familiar with?
I don't know. That's hard for me to say, but I realize what a great tool Pro Tools and that kind of stuff is, but it shortcut, so it keeps you. You don't have to be as good a musician, and I regret that.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I also wonder whether things like, when you were back playing in your first covers bands, I know a lot of musicians growing up through the 60s played in, beat bands, playing for hours a night and learning lots and lots of songs. Right.
The Mystics was my first band, and that was with the guy that bought the Jazzmaster. he later bought a Chet Atkins Country Gentleman guitar because George Harrison had one.
Yeah.
But he became a school teacher. He no longer played. Nobody I started out with.
Oh, right.
But we learned a lot of songs, the Mystics did. But as soon as I started recording, that was out the winter. I was going to the studio not every day, but every week anyway, and working 1 or 2 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week. And that kept you from going out and learning all these other songs. And sometimes I would go to a club or somewhere, and they'd play a song. Band would be playing a song, and they say, "Well, come up and play on it." I said, "Well, I don't really know it." And they said, "Well, you played the record." I said, "Yeah, yeah, but that was a year ago. I've moved on. I've learned 200 more songs since then."
You were playing on the hits for the next year.
Yeah,
That's amazing. You were properly on the front line. Going
yeah,
back to what you were saying a second ago, I think that one of the best pieces of advice that I've been given through up until now is about musicians. The ones who make it are the ones that hold on the longest.
yeah. Well, I think it's quite true. I don't know how to do anything else really. And now that I'm not able to work very much because of COVID-19, I'm growing tomatoes. I'm
Wow.
walking my dogs every morning. And I've got more of a regular life than I had, uh, and I guess that's good in some ways. And I don't really. There's some ways I don't really want to go back. Maybe I'm ready for retirement. I don't know. I still enjoy playing, but it's getting harder for me to play because of just physical issues. And like I said, I'm playing more and more with people who are 20 years younger than me, and they look at me as grandpa or something.
I I know that this particular time is pretty unprecedented, but you must have experienced quiet times before, so it must must be a feeling that you're used to, maybe not used to dealing with, but you've had it before, because it's
Yeah,
certainly a feeling that us musicians do struggle with.
yeah, I tell my wife occasionally, if I don't have anything booked for the rest of my life, would be true that I'd have nothing on my book. But this is the first time that it's really been like what it is now, because nobody's doing anything.
Yeah,
Uh, it's
just
terrible. I hope they get a something to fix this disease.
it's a. I heard that Oxford University here in the UK has just come up with a
Right.
vaccine, so
I've been reading that.
yeah, hopefully we're not too far off.
Yeah. It's going to kill a lot of businesses, not just restaurants, clubs. I worked, the guy that was the road manager for the Water Boys is a man named Nick Robinson. He lives in Manchester. And sent a picture of the inside of an airplane, everybody shoulder to shoulder with masks on, and then the picture underneath it was an empty auditorium, an empty theater. And he said, "What? Tell me what this is all about." And so something's got to happen.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not one for sort of negativity or like having a chip on my shoulder, but I really do believe that the arts is underappreciated by sort of
Oh
governments.
yeah, yeah. We're lucky to have benefactors every so often, and whether they're record labels or just guys with money or what, but we need that extra help every now and then. And
Absolutely.
there would be times when I'd have nothing on my book, nothing planned, but then something would always come up.
Yeah, I guess it's just a case of holding your nerve.
Yeah, and so you have to just try not to spend everything you have.
um, I'm really conscious of taking up a lot of your time, so we'll wrap things up. I just wonder, it might be a slight cliche thing, but I wonder if you could, someone of your experience could offer some advice to young musicians coming up now. What would you say to them?
Well, learn your instrument. Try to get as much experience doing different things and learn your instrument. And with me, I had to pick one instrument. I love playing guitar. I'd love to be able to play the drums, but I thought time spent learning something else. If I put it all into bass, maybe I'll be a better bass player. And that's a good thing. And try to play all different kinds of music if you can, because you never know when you might need to play it. Uh, I don't. I've never really turned down work. I've always whatever it was, I'd say, yeah, I'll do it. I worked when I was 40. I'm not sorry. We're playing with the Water Boys. I got a call from Cheryl Crow.
Wow.
Wow, Cheryl Crow, and so I had to be late to show in Los Angeles with Waterboys so I could do this Cheryl Crow session. I went with no sleep, but I wanted to do it. And then she called me back, so I did another. And on her latest album, I'm on two of the tracks. One of them playing with Joe Walsh, the
Wow.
other, the other one with Chris Christopherson. So you never know. Don't hang in there. Don't give up.
I'm a big Sheryl Crow fan. I went to see her last year. I absolutely
Yes,
adore it.
yes, she's great. She's great.
Yeah.
And she lives outside of Nashville. She's got a farm. In fact, when we recorded with her, we recorded in her barn, and there were horses downstairs, and the studio was upstairs.
That's crazy.
She's a talented musician. I mean, she can play the bass, the guitar, piano. She's really good.
Is there anyone that obviously you've worked with so many people, but is there anyone that you wish that you could have worked with that you haven't?
Elvis. I'm not even a big Elvis fan, but we were told his his people contacted our studio about coming and recording with us, and then he died. But it was he heard "I'll Take You There" by the Staple Singers, and he said, "I want to record with those guys," but then he passed away. But I don't know. There are a lot of artists out there that I really like. I like Spoon. Hear of Spoon?
I'm not.
They're,
No.
Yeah, they're from Austin, Texas. It's
Okay.
really good. It's really one guy, but it's the name of a group, Spoon. Uh, like them. There's several young groups that I like.
I'll check them out, and I'll put a link in the notes for the show so that people can go and have a listen.
Okay,
Cool.
I've lost you.
Oh, sorry.
You're back now.
I'm back. Yeah. I'll link it so that people can go and check that out. Is there? Well, that's it. I don't want to. I feel like I could just pick your brains and listen to you chat forever, but I want to let you go and not take too much of your time. So I really do appreciate you speaking to me.
Well, I've enjoyed it myself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wish you a lot of luck.
Thank you very much. I always say it, but it's a real pleasure that people of your stature and your history want to come and speak to me, because I think it's really important to hear what you have to say.
Well, I'll maybe finish this off. Rolling Stone magazine had the top 50 bass players, and I guess, and I'm right before Family Man Barrett. Played with Bob Marley and the Wailers. He was always a favorite bass player of mine. But they have in that it was not even in the magazine. It was online, and then with that, where they're saying I'm number 27, they have a picture of me. But I must have been 27 when the picture was taken. And I think, well, maybe I was number 27 when that picture was made. I no longer would be number 27. I don't think. So many great bass players.
I'm sure that's not the case.
Well, I've enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And,
Thank you very
hey,
much, David.
And stay in touch. We can talk anytime you like.
Oh, brilliant. I appreciate that. There we are. David Hood. What an amazing guy. And as usual, I hope that you enjoyed listening to that conversation as much as I enjoyed having it. It was a real joy to speak to him. I forgot to mention at the beginning introduction that the sound quality was a little bit dodgy. I mean, often, so I'm calling from the UK and trying to get hold of some, often these guys who are over in America, and everybody's got different ways of working. So FaceTime's always nice because I get to see the person I'm speaking to, but sometimes the signal dips in and out. And if you're trying to just capture that phone audio, it can be quite tricky when you've got one chance, and that's that. So please forgive that, and I hope that you understand why that exists. So there we go. I'm actually pre-recording these intros before I go on holiday so I can be prepared. So I'm not 100% sure who I'm going to have on next week. I have a few guests lined up for the week I am returning, but I'm not sure which of those will be recorded first, and then which one will be coming out first. So I'm going to leave you hanging on that one. Yes. And I've got no other news. So if you want to contact me, as usual, you can contact me at joe@allyouneedisdrums.com. And you can look at my website, allyouneedisdrums.com. There's stuff on there for the isolated drums that I send out. There's also a full archive of the isolated drums, and you can see some information about the sessions and stuff I do there. I want to say a big thank you to Joe Kane for the amazing intro and outro music he supplies for this podcast, and the artwork that my good friend David Henshaw also supplies. And that's that. So I will speak to you in a couple of weeks. So have a good one and see you soon. Goodbye.